Okay, today we're going to address something alarming that I've been noticing over the past few years, and that's where you work really hard to get your ex back, you succeed, and then you go through another breakup. Now, for many of you guys watching this channel, this may be the most devastating occurrence to have happened to you, especially after you put all of this work in to get your ex back. So what we're going to be doing today is talking a little bit about why this alarming trend occurs and what you should do to avoid it. But first things first, if you're a beginner and you're just watching this video and you're kind of like, where should I be starting? Should I get my ex back? Should I not be trying to get my ex back? Should I be moving on? Probably the number one thing that you're going to want to do is hop over to our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, and take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It's a simple free 2-minute quiz designed to basically tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. Now, all you have to do if you want to take that quiz is simply look in the description link of this YouTube video and click on it. It's that simple. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's begin. And I think probably the best place to start is by talking about why this horrible event occurs again. So in the past, I've been accused of only being super optimistic with how I talk about my success stories. In fact, I've even been accused of hiding things about the success stories. Well, I'm gonna actually peel back the curtain so that you can actually see a little bit what happens after success stories get their exes back. And it is going to show a very large black eye on our process, but it's something I think you need to be aware of so that you can prevent it from happening to you if you get your ex back, if that's the route you want to go. So what is this big black eye that I'm talking about? Well, quite frankly, it's that we've noticed about 50% of our success stories, yes, that means the people that I'm interviewing, will go through another breakup with their ex in about 3 months after they get them back. And this trend has stayed pretty consistent throughout my entire career here on this YouTube channel, with the podcast, and even with my website. But what is the real reasons for why these breakups continue to reoccur? Well, ultimately, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. But perhaps I should be saying, luckily, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure this out. Usually, why most couples who get back together end up breaking up again, it's because a lot of the issues that caused the breakup in the first place weren't worked on or fixed or even moved on about. So I'm going to tell you an interesting story from my childhood that always stuck with me, and it's something that I've seen just throughout human nature in general. So one thing you may not know is I grew up with a really great household. My mom and my dad were just incredible throughout my childhood. My dad was actually the human resources manager for all of the McDonald's Corporation in the city of Houston. That was a lot of overseeing to do. He would be in charge of the hiring practice. He'd be in charge of any kind of issues going up within any of the locations of McDonald's. So sometimes he would have to go on site. You know, he worked at the corporate building, but he would have to go on site to deal with some of the people that were maybe having problems. And what's really interesting is he found that a lot of times when he would go deal with people in this workplace environment that were having issues, he would obviously talk to them, calm them down, and fix whatever the problem was. And they would, for the most part, listen. There would be an immediate change, but slowly but surely, as the days and weeks and months went on, there would be a regression to the mean. In other words, the same issue that he was called there to fix in the first place would crop up again, and he'd have to come back again. And he saw this not just with one location, but all locations. What's really interesting is when I started Ex-Boyfriend Recovery, this is something that I really didn't think much about until I started dealing with success stories. We started seeing why success stories actually broke up. And what usually happens is when we work to get a couple reunited and back together, it is exciting. The honeymoon period kicks off. But eventually, the honeymoon period will wear off. And when it wears off, there is a regression back to the mean. And if you or your ex haven't worked on any of the issues that caused your breakup in the first place, then most likely a breakup will occur again. I mean, 50% of our success stories have broken up with their exes again within the first 3 months. That is a large amount. So the question now becomes, how do you avoid that if you get your ex back? Well, I'm gonna actually give you only one tip today. But this one tip may be the very most important thing you'll ever hear from me about keeping a relationship alive. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I founded a website called marriagerecovery.com. You can look at it if you want, but it's really not much use because I don't really spend any time on it whatsoever. The thinking was to have sort of this holy trinity of breakup properties. I had ex-boyfriend recovery dealing with women going through breakups. I had ex-girlfriend recovery dealing with men going through breakups. And I fought really hard to get marriage recovery, dealing with marriages who were going through breakups. I owned the recovery space. Now, one thing about business is it is such a thing to spread yourself too thin, and essentially I had to put more of my attention on ex-boyfriend recovery and ex-girlfriend recovery. But that doesn't mean that I didn't work hard for marriage recovery. In fact, the very first article I wrote for marriage recovery was about how to save a marriage. And really, if you look at that article, even to this day, it is one of the best things I have ever written, because I talk a lot about what's working in the world to keep marriages and existing relationships strong. You know, you get the general, like, spend more alone time together, make sure you're using the right tone of voice, make sure your body language is correct. But what was fascinating to me was something that I came across called the golden ratio. Now, anyone who's bought in my ex recovery program will notice that the very last chapters or the very last modules of my course isn't like, hey, good job, you got your ex back. It's, hey, this is a problem we're seeing. We're seeing people who get back together, break up again. And if you want your relationship to survive, this is what you need to do. And you'll notice that I talk about the golden ratio in there. And really, it has a lot to do with kindness. Essentially, what you're looking to do is be kind to your partner and them in turn being kind to you. Now, it sounds simplistic when I put it like that, right? Well, let me pull out my phone because I'm going to read you an excerpt from the article on marriagerecovery.com that I wrote talking about the kindness ratio or the golden ratio. One interesting finding is that couples who practice kindness in relation to how they interact with each other and do so at a ratio of 5-to-1, 5 kind acts versus negative encounters, have a remarkable 87% success rate in marriage. That is how powerful the act of being truly positive in marriages can impact your life. Now, on the surface, it seems simplistic. Okay, so all I have to do is be really nice to my ex, or really nice to my new boyfriend or girlfriend 5 times for every negative interaction I have. But I'm here to tell you it's not as simple as you think. Because if you actually sit down in a day and try to tally up the 5 kind things you did for your partner, I kind of think you don't do 5 things a day. In fact, I did this today, before I came up here to film this video. Now, it's approximately 8:24 p.m. as I film this video for my YouTube channel. And I can only really think of one kind thing that I did for my wife today, which means I not only suck, but I need to up my game. So what was that kind thing? I went out to get her lunch. The problem is, most of us are so wrapped up into our own lives. We're kind of creatures of self-interest if you really think about it. We want what's best for ourselves, but at the same time, we want people to think that we're selfless. This is a paradox in and of itself. So it really requires you and your new partner to both put a lot of effort into just being kind to one another. And here's my challenge to you. At the end of the day, when you guys are texting back and forth or you're in bed together, make it a game. Talk about, hey, what are the kind things that you did for me today? And if you can't name 5, and he can't name 5 or she can't name 5, you got work to do. Hey, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you take that quiz that I was talking about at the beginning of the video. All you have to do is look in the description link of this YouTube video and click on that blue link you see there. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. That really helps us out. I'll see you next time.